Hello everybody, Wannabe Reviewer here, and welcome back to the Wannabe Podcast, episode 38. Before we begin this week's podcast, I just want to say that I am quite excited because, compared to my usual podcast where it's just me talking about the news, talking about my week, that sort of thing, I actually have a guest on this time. And so yeah, I'm excited. I will introduce the guest in a moment, but I just want to let you guys know that compared to my usual thing, this week's going to be a little more freeform. We're just going to talk about like our YouTube channels, our interests, such as video games, anime, that sort of thing, because I know this person loves that stuff. So yeah, expect a more casual podcast, but hopefully one that you guys enjoy, all the same. And with that being said, my guest this week is one Spider Island Slim, so say hello, Slim.
Howdy, party people. Spider Island Slim from the Galactic Happy Hour, and I'm galactically happy to be here.
Nice
that
pun.
was really cheesy.
It was fine. It's fine. But yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, I have talked about Slim before. I want to say it was like a few parts ago, maybe like 5 at most. I mentioned him. Back then he was called Spider Island Slim, the host of the Midnight Monster Party, but just recently, actually, he went through a little makeup change, and he's mixing things up on his channel. So I actually think that's a pretty good place to start. Slim, why don't you tell people kind of what you do? Tell them a little bit about the change. I mean, that way they can kind of get to know you,
Well, the channel is now, it went from Midnight Monster Party to the Galactic Happy Hour, and it's basically just a somewhat shift in focus. It's still a whole bunch of silly nonsense, but now it's going to be more generally sci-fi, video game, and toy-based, and not so much, horror-based. Oh yeah, and I'm a giant goblin cat. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, he's a giant goblin cat. He used to be just a vampire goblin guy, but he drank a little potion that, he wanted hair, and it gave him lots of hair. So if you want to see what he's talking about, you gotta go check out his channel. The last 2 videos he's made, like the little skits revolving it, really funny. I think I've just had a good time on his channel. Go check those out.
I appreciate that, but I have been spending a fortune on cat shampoo.
Oh boy, I can imagine. I was gonna say, he was talking about how, you've gone through a little bit of a change on your channel and stuff lately. Usually on the Wannabe podcast, like the first part of it is me just talking about my week and like what I've been up to. So I was gonna say, I'll give you the floor. What have you been up to? Like, what have you been watching, playing? that sort of thing. What have you been up to? I guess like the last week or two, big stuff that you want to talk about.
Well, it's interesting, and jumping back just a tiny bit, this podcast has been my gateway back into anime, because I was super into anime throughout the 90s, but around 2000 or so, I just kind of lost track, and I have been gone for a long time. But listening to this podcast, I've started learning about anime again, and I've actually started making an effort to go back or start watching anime. So I actually this week have been watching some anime. I've been watching the show by Rock.
Oh, okay, I've heard about that one. Yeah. Actually one I have not seen, but I have heard things about it. I've heard it's supposed to be a pretty fun show.
Well, I just recently finished K-On!, which I loved.
Oh boy, K-On! It's just like the funnest, like sweetest show.
Yeah, I was blown away by that one. And after I finished it, I was kind of feeling that, that emptiness, that K-On! Emptiness. So I was like, I need another show about a girl band. And so that's why I went to Show by Rock, which is another one. It has some similarities to K-On!, but kind of like if K-On! Was insane, it would be Show by Rock.
Oh boy, that sounds interesting.
It's cute. It's a cute, fun little. I don't know if I have the sophisticated anime palette that you do, but I think it's a cute, fun little show.
I watch all sorts of anime. That's the thing too, I know some people, like I have a friend, he only likes the more like ecchi, like lewd comedy stuff. I have another friend that he only watches like the hardcore, like fighting stuff, like the more serious stuff. Me, I watch like a mix of everything. So if you mention anything from Dragon Ball Z to K-On! To like this season's like romance, I probably know a little bit about it,
Yeah, I tend to lean toward more comedic stuff, but I'm pretty across the board as well. I think the only thing I just don't super get into, and I can watch it in small doses, is the just action, action, action type stuff.
Yeah, I got you. So all right, you mentioned Show by Rock. You said that's pretty good. What else have you been watching?
Well, that's actually the only anime I'm watching right now, but I have been playing Warriors All Stars on PS4.
Nice. And how's that been going for you?
Oh, I love it. I love those Warriors games. I didn't discover them until a couple years back, but they've quickly become, top 5 easily of my favorite video game genres. And if anybody listening doesn't know what a Warriors game is, it's essentially you play as a character fighting like huge onslaughts of other people or whatever you're fighting at once. That's really the best way I could describe it.
Yeah, I think the games are pretty fun. I mean, I know they've been around for a while too, but I know a popular one that kind of people got into because maybe people who aren't so much into the Warriors games, but they're into like this series. A few years ago, the Hyrule Warriors. A lot of people were interested in that one.
I almost bought a Wii U just for that game alone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I came very close because I really, really wanted that game.
I was gonna say, I know I've seen when you leave comments on my channel whenever I'm mentioning a Switch. If you ever buy a Switch, Hyrule Warriors is on the Switch, so there you go.
Yeah, it's very tempting.
Yeah, because like the Warriors game. I don't know. I think there's really fun. There's just something really satisfying of like building up like meter and using moves and just erasing people off the map. And like, I like the games. I think they're pretty fun. And like I said, if you want something that's a little different, because the other ones, they're usually, they have to do a lot with like medieval, I don't know if medieval, what's the word? Like feudal Japan and stuff. So you want something like a little different, like the Hyrule Warriors is an option. I think I've heard there's like a Kamen Rider version. If I remember
wow.
Yeah, I believe there's a Kamen Rider version. I think I heard about that at some point. And I know I did a story not too long ago where they said they're going to make that new Persona version. So, if you want something a little different, they do have like different like spin-offs or like, where they have like a bit of a different flavor to them. So.
Well, where I started with them and how I discovered them is my favorite all-time anime series is Fist of the North Star. And same company that does the Warriors games did 2 Fist of the North Star Warrior style games. And I liked the first one, but part 2 was phenomenal. And I just found myself hooked. I was like, well, I got to find more games like this. And then I read after the fact that it was a Warrior style game, and I kind of went from there. But yeah, that Fist of the North Star part 2 for a PS3 is fantastic.
Yeah, so there we go. There's another example of like a different flavor to the Warriors games. There you go.
Really into the Shinron Kagura ones too. Those are a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, they are. Those are the ones that unfortunately like PS4, Sony wants to like, I don't know, they want to like censor a lot of stuff, and it's been like a whole thing right now.
Isn't it a weird world we're living in where Nintendo is not censoring, but Sony is?
I don't even know what to say, man. As I've been looking at the news and I've seen like Nintendo be so lenient on stuff and Sony buckling down more, it feels like they did a total switch. I don't know. Like, I know what you mean. It just feels like an alternate reality or something.
Mm-hmm. I'd read, or maybe I heard it on your podcast. That's where I get most of my anime news and game news. But that one of the big guys behind this, I think it was the Shinron Kagura games, left because he was just so fed up with all the censorship going on right now.
That doesn't sound familiar to me.
Okay.
I don't think I covered that, but it sounds like the kind of thing I would cover. So I don't blame you for thinking it might have been me, but I don't think it was me.
Yeah.
All right. So you've been watching some Show by Rock. You've been playing some Warriors All Stars. That's pretty good. Anything else to add to the mix?
Oh yeah, and also we've been watching. Don't know how I forgot this because it's an anime based on one of my all-time favorite video game series, but the Hyper Dimension Neptunia anime.
Nice.
Been watching that as well.
And how's that been going?
It's been going good. It's a little more serious than the game and a little more serious than I would like, but there's still just enough of the game's greatness in it to make it definitely worth watching if you like the games.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've seen the games before. The games are usually like really comedic and goofy, so it's kind of weird to hear that the anime is like a bit more serious, but I guess that's just the direction they wanted to take it for some reason.
They do that sometimes. Like the Senran Kagura games are for the most part very light and silly, but then the anime was a bit more dramatic, which I thought was just odd.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess they're just trying to like, I don't know, maybe they felt they couldn't make a series out of it if it was just like always goofy, I guess. I don't know. Kind of weird.
Yeah. Well, what about you? What have you been watching this week?
Oh, I've been watching all sorts of stuff. I feel like if people ask me, like, how do you find the time to watch so much anime? And, like, I don't even know what to tell them. Let me look at my list real quick. I watched 1, 2, 3... Okay, I watched 3 new ones, and I watched the second episode of something I mentioned last week, right? So I'm just gonna dump them all out, you know, add some comments if you wish, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so first of all, at the top of the list, I watched the second episode of How Heavy Are the Dumbbells You Lift? I don't know if you heard
That one sounded cute.
Yeah.
Cute.
Yeah, I was talking about it last week. It's the one where there's a girl, you know, average high school girl, except for the fact that she loves to eat a lot, and because she wants to stay in shape or whatever and not gain so much weight, goes to a gym. She thinks it's going to be like a sports club, ends up being like a hardcore, there's dudes just pumping iron gym. It's really funny. Watch the second episode, and yeah, it was pretty good. It has lots of funny moments still. And like I said, it's kind of interesting how it has a lot of actual like working out tips. Like in this one, for instance, episode starts with her weighing herself, and she's saying like, oh, after all like the exercise I've been doing, I should have lost some weight. But then she sees that her weight went up. And she's freaking out about it. But then when she goes to her trainer or whatever, you know, he's explained to her that's because muscle is heavier than fat. So, you know, they're talking about all that if you start working out, you know, you'll probably see some weight gain because, you know, you're gaining muscle and stuff. And I don't know, it's really interesting because like, you wouldn't think they'd have all these like tips and all these facts and stuff, but they really do, which is like, it's pretty cool, you know? And besides,
that's an interesting little tidbit. I've heard that for a long time.
Yeah, and then just besides that, like I said, it's just really funny seeing her reaction to everything around her. The trainer guy, it still makes me laugh how he looks like a scrawny regular guy, and then he'll like flex and like his arm is like huge and his sleeve will just tear off. Like it's pretty funny. And yeah, besides that, it's funny too because she just keeps eating, you know, like she keeps saying, you know, like I want to stay fit, but then she turns around and just like, I think at the end of this episode, after she had worked out a whole bunch, she went and ate like a huge steak that like scared the student body president that was with her. So like that was really funny. So yeah.
Slice of life. I don't know if you would consider that one a slice of life anime, but that's probably my favorite genre overall.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like slice of life. They find it a little too, I don't know if like boring or they find it too cheesy, but I always enjoy a good slice of life. I think it's interesting just seeing people in their daily lives, you know? Like I think this one might be like a comedy slice of life, like sports thing. I think that's what it's labeled.
Makes sense, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so I'm enjoying it. I recommend it. I think that, you know, from what I've seen so far, it's funny and it actually has some good tips for like working out and stuff. It gives some good information. So looking at my list, the next one that I watched, this is a new one, but I managed to watch 2 episodes just based on like, I guess how my podcast is done this week, you know, because last week I recorded before I watched the episode, so I watched last week's episode and this one, but I watched an anime called Dr. Stone, and Dr. Stone, really weird premise. There's some things that I don't quite like, but I do enjoy it overall. Basically, it starts with, you know, there's these kids in high school. One of them is going to ask this girl that he likes, he's going to ask her out. And before that, he stops at the, I don't know, it's like a lab, you know, science lab, to talk to his friend. And that's, I guess, the main character. It's this guy with like weird, spiky green hair sort of thing. And he's talking to him and he says he's going to go talk to the girl of his dreams. And, you know, the scientist kid is kind of like telling him to go for it, whatever. As he goes outside to talk to this girl and confess his feelings, there's like this weird green light in the sky. And then it shows that everybody on Earth got petrified. Everyone got turned to stone. And, you know, time passes, we see like a time skip sort of thing. This kid, somehow he like breaks out of his like, you know, stone coffin, if you want to call it. It's like his body was covered in stone. And he's wandering around, like wondering what happened to Earth. And out of nowhere, you know, he sees the girl that he wanted to like confess to. He sees her petrified body. It's like leaned against the tree. and he sees some writing on the tree. And he follows the writing, where it says to go, and he runs into his scientist friend. And his scientist friend kind of explains that, like, yeah, we're basically like 3,000 years in the future. Somehow, everyone got petrified, and we woke up, for some reason. And from there, it just goes into them trying to rebuild society and see how to unpetrify everybody. And in the first episode, it shows that they kind of discover, there's this thing that was pouring onto us that probably helped, break down the rock that was entombing us. And so they're trying to, remake that formula. And I don't know, it's weird. It's definitely a weird anime. And there's definitely some weird aspects to it, like the fact that these high school students are so smart that they're rebuilding society, that sort of thing. But it seems interesting, just this weird mystery of why did everybody get petrified, and these two kids basically saying, let's free everybody from their rock prison and let's restart society. It is interesting.
What is the tone of it like? Is it got kind of a serious vibe, or is it more so comedic in nature? How is it?
It's funny because you would think it would be super serious, but it's not. It's not super goofy either. It's just middle of the road. Okay. It is kind of serious when you see it. The guy wakes up and he sees that everything's petrified, and he's kind of wondering what happened to the world, and he's sad because the girl he likes is like I said, she's petrified, leaning against a tree. But then whenever he's hanging out with his scientist friend, it's a little more lighthearted. They're kind of joking around, hanging out. His scientist friend is very cocky, and so he calls him Big Oaf. Because basically, the scientist guy's the brains. This main guy, who want to confess his feelings, he's kind of the brawn or whatever. And I don't know, it's weird. It's middle of the road. It's not very serious, but it's not super over the top goofy either,
Okay.
And yeah, like I said, overall, I do like it. I am interested to see where it goes. In the second episode, I guess minor spoilers. They do figure out this compound that they think is going to work to, depetrify everybody, and they end up needing the help of a big strong guy that used to be a fighter in their class, because they're getting chased by some lions that I guess after the world got petrified, the lions escaped from the zoo and just, went back to nature or whatever. And so they do need some help to fight the lions, and so they do unpetrify that classmate of theirs, and you kind of see a bit of a conflict near the end where it looks like he has an ideal different to theirs. While they want to try to free everybody, he's kind of maybe we can unpetrify the people who really deserve it and, start over better this time. So it's interesting to see where this is going to go, Yeah,
it's an interesting premise. I like the sound of it.
So yeah, so there you go. That's one to add to your list. And for anyone who's listening, if that sounds interesting, I would say check it out. There are 2 episodes out now. Moving on, another thing that I watched was a show called Fire Force. And I gotta ask, Slim, have you ever watched Soul Eater before?
Yeah, I watched the first few, I believe, years and years ago.
Basically, Fire Force, I think it's I don't know if it's the same director, or I don't know if this is based off of the same manga as that guy. But I know that someone who was involved leading Soul Eater, whether it was the manga or the anime, he's in charge of this one. And basically, Fire Force, I don't really know what to think about it yet. It's really weird. Basically, the best way to describe it, it takes place in a universe where people they can get basically possessed and become a crazy fire demon that's hell-bent on destroying everything. And in order to combat that, we have the Fire Force, which is basically they're half firefighter, half exorcists, because everyone in the fire squad has some sort of pyrokinesis or telekinetic powers, and they go around putting out these fires and exorcising these demons. They're plaguing society, and they're basically dressed like firefighters. So it's a strange one. I've watched 2 episodes. It looks interesting so far, but I don't quite know what to think of it yet, because it is just a very weird premise.
Is it fairly action heavy? Because it sounds kind of action-y.
I would say it's pretty action-y. We haven't seen too much action yet, but I can tell it's kind of leading up to it. Because in the first episode, we're introduced to our main character. We're told that in the past, he might have... It's weird, because in the past, his house went up in flames. and his mother and younger brother died. I believe it was younger brother, and everyone blames it on him because, he has pyrokinetic abilities. And he says, no, something was with us in the house that day. But, nobody believes him, and so he's kind of an outcast, and people look down on him. And so in the first episode, it's all about him joining the Fire Force and saying that he wants to be like a hero to redeem himself and change the way people think about him. And so, yeah, in the first episode, like the last half of it, is them fighting one of those like fire demons. And like the way they fight it, like he has like these crazy fire abilities like from his feet, and so he basically like drop kicks into oblivion.
I was gonna say that, that's something you don't see every day. Someone drop kicking fire demons.
Yeah, he just drop kicks it like in the chest. I guess he like hits its weak spot. And yeah, in the second episode, it kind of shows them training. They're all showing off their different powers, like some people, it looks more magic based where they're like summoning crazy force fields. Him, it's more, melee based where he's kicking stuff. And like I said, I don't really know what to think about it. It's a weird premise, but it seems interesting, so I'll definitely keep an eye on it. So,
All right.
And finally, the last anime that I watched, and for some reason they released 3 episodes at once. I'm not quite sure why, but I really liked it. I think it's a very interesting, like very unique premise. It's called Vinland Saga, and basically it's an anime about Vikings and Vikings going to war.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah, and that's why I really like it, because I really love when an anime either focuses on like a sport that I've never heard of before, because that kind of gets me into it, helps me learn about it, or it really, it's set in some sort of like setting that we never get. And so this is something I've never seen before. Like I've never really seen a Viking anime. And so like the first 3 episodes are pretty interesting. It shows our main character. He's basically like a retired Viking who faked his death because he was tired of fighting. And so he's been living in the countryside with his family. He has a wife, an older daughter, and a young son. And it shows how basically a group of Vikings or whatever, they're going to fight the English. And they say, like, we know that you deserted the war and we've just been letting you like get away with it up to now, but we need you so bad that we need you to come back. And so they kind of force him, they kind of strong arm him into coming back to join the war. And he's obviously tired of it. Like he knows like the horrors of war. He's not interested, but like all the young men that he takes with him, they're super into it. And I don't know, it seems really interesting so far. Just having that main character who's badass enough to take down a whole fleet by himself, but he like has no interest in fighting. Like it's a really interesting premise. So
yeah, it sounds cool, because actually 2 of my favorite shows airing right now are both on about Vikings, which would be Vikings on History Channel and then The Last Kingdom on Netflix.
Gotcha. So you have a little bit of a love for the Vikings.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny because it's one of those things that's so cool, but you never really see it covered that much until like lately. I think lately people realize it's like an untapped market, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's the closest thing to kind of like D&D swords and that kind of stuff that happened in real life, I'd say.
Yeah, for reals. And especially how they even went to like, it's been said Vikings probably like went to America at one point and they settled there and they went to different islands and like all sorts of stuff. Like they say the Vikings had like a tremendous reach and we never really hear about their stories. So like, that's really cool.
Yeah, if you haven't watched either of those shows, I don't know how many live action shows you watch, but I highly recommend both of those.
Yeah, because I have seen a little bit of Vikings on the, you said it was Discovery, right? Or was it History?
History Channel, yeah.
Okay, but I feel like I have seen that one before. Like I've seen some episodes of it, and I really liked it. I thought it was really cool, so...
Yeah. Last Kingdom is great too. That's a Netflix.
That's a Netflix show. Yeah, I might check that out. If I feel like there's something to talk about, I might even do a review on it. That would be cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that basically does it for anime I watched. One that I was hoping to watch, but I didn't get around to it, is a series called Given. Have you ever watched Beck, Mongolian Chop Squad?
I've heard the name, but that kind of came and went in that time period where I was kind of lost anime.
Okay, because I have done a review of it on my channel. I really like that anime. I think it's really good. Really quick, Back Mongolian Chop Squad. It basically follows this main character that he doesn't really know what he wants to do with his life. He's kind of average, if I remember correctly. And his life changes when he runs into because I think our main character is like 14, 15. He runs into like this 17-year-old guy that he's the main guitarist of a band. And he helps him get into music. And as he gets into music, he picks up the guitar and he eventually joins their band. And so it's basically about this band and their struggle to like make it big. And I thought it was really good because like the music's really good. Whether you watch it subbed or dubbed, I think it's like really well done. And then just the story of seeing this guy that, everyone tells him stop playing around. You'll never make it big. You need to like grow up and like find a real job, this and that. But his passion becomes music and he wants to make it big with his band, and seeing how he fights, to make it work is just like really interesting.
Well, as I said, slice of life is one of my favorite genres. And then band life, slice of life, is my favorite of the slice of life genres, I think, if you consider that slice of life.
I can see it. Yeah, that's definitely like an aspect of it, because you're looking at the life of this band. And so if you haven't watched it before, I would say check out my review so you can kind of like hear some of the music. If I remember correctly, I had a few of the songs playing like in the background, so you can see some of the music, you can see me talk about it, and I think you'd really love it. I think Beck is like one of those like all-time classics, basically. Like, it's really good.
Yeah, you've already sold me. I think I'm going to look that one up.
Alrighty, so good. I'm glad I sold you on it. However, the whole reason I bring it up, I feel like I just went on a tangent there trying to sell Beck to you. Given from what I've seen of like the poster art and the description, it looks like it kind of has some of those Beck qualities, where it's about like making a band.
Okay.
So, like I said, I didn't watch it. I didn't get around to it because I don't even know like if it's on Crunchyroll or if I would have to go download it somewhere else. But just looking at the poster and reading what it's about, it seems like it might be that kind of thing where it's about people trying to start up a band and like their struggles of making it work and stuff. So hopefully for like next week's podcast, I'll have watched an episode or two and I can talk about it, if it's good or not.
Well, before I started kind of giving anime another shot, or getting back into anime semi-recently, the last new anime I had seen for like years and years and years was Nana, which remains one of my all-time favorites.
I still need to watch that, but I've heard it's supposed to be really good. That's the one about the two girls, right? That they're each called Nana, right? And then it's like they become roommates or something.
Exactly. Only problem with it is it doesn't end.
Oh.
It kind of, the anime series kind of stopped, and it was going to pick up and they were going to finish it after the manga finished. And then the manga went for a little bit longer, and then the creator, they said, got sick. So I don't know exactly what that means entirely. And she just stopped. And so so it's never actually been finished.
I see. That's the thing that like, following anime and manga and stuff, like, it's such a gamble because sometimes you watch a series and you like fall in love with it and then you're waiting for that second season that doesn't come, or you're following a story like the manga, like in this case, and then like the creator either dies or gets sick or they feel like they can't come up with new content, and so you kind of just end up, it's a dead end. So that's really disappointing.
I don't know why, though, because there was enough manga published after the ending of the series that they could have at least done a second season. I don't know why they didn't just do a second season and maybe come up with their own endings, since she seems to be, because it's been like years and years and years now since she stopped doing stuff. So I don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah, that's really disappointing. I mean, the only thing we can hope is that someday they'll pick it up. I mean, it does happen. It's kind of rare. But I mean, like, for instance, that show, Dororo, that I just covered like a week or two ago, that I had watched all of this like reboot of it. I mean, that was a manga from like the 60s that for whatever reason they're like, hey, let's give it like a new treatment and let's make it a little more mature. And I mean, that got made even if it was years later. And
right.
Yeah, and then I know that, for instance, that that manga Fruits Basket, that's supposed to be like very popular, and that, I don't know. I mean, I think it was the early 2000s, but it had an anime series. It kind of went its own direction near the end, and some people were, kind of disappointed. But like that's back right now, and it seems to be sticking to the manga a little closer. So I mean, it's one of those things. It could always happen. So never lose faith, I guess.
Interesting you bring that up. I had mentioned the Hyperdimension Neptunia anime earlier, and I believe that originally aired in 2013. Well, I read the other day that they are just now, this month, releasing an OAV to follow it up.
I mean, there you go. I mean, see, that's what I mean. It's crazy because sometimes it seems like all hope is lost, but I mean, there are surprises, sometimes they surprise you and they release stuff like years later. So, I mean, hopefully one of these days, Nana, maybe they even reboot it and they start from scratch and cover the whole thing this time. We never know.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that being said, that's basically it for me for anime. Besides that, I actually played a bit of Crash Team Racing. For whatever reason, I saw the game was like available for like renting or whatever for like a couple of dollars from some, kiosk at Walmart. And I was like, I'll try the game out. So I did, and it's fine. Honestly, it's not great. I feel like something like Mario Kart or even like the Sonic racing games are like way better, but it was still fun to just try it out for like a day and play the adventure mode for a bit and stuff. I mean, it's fine,
Yeah, I never really super got into those kind of games, but there was a brief time when whenever I would have friends over, kind of the go-to party thing to do was the bomb game on the GameCube Mario Kart. I don't know if you remember that, but it was a secondary mode where it was a versus and you all just kind of threw bombs at each other.
Yeah.
And there's another one where you stole balloons from each other.
I was about to say, and there was a balloon mode too. I was about to say that. Yeah, I think it's funny enough. I think the GameCube version of Mario Kart, even though the new ones have had, like maybe better like characters and like that sort of thing, I think none of the games have topped the versus mode of the GameCube game. I feel like the maps for that and like the modes were just the best, honestly.
I mean, you've spent many hours playing that game. It's funny when most people at parties were drinking and carrying on and, actually doing party stuff. We were all gathered around GameCube playing Mario Kart.
I mean, it works. If it works, it works. Right?
And that's a game I've noticed that even people that don't play games, who would really never even touched a modern generation system, would sit down behind that bomb game or the balloon game and just have a great time.
I mean, I think a lot of Nintendo games are like that. I mean, like the same thing with like Smash. A lot of people maybe don't play fighting games or like games in general, but then they see Smash Bros. And they're kind of like, ooh, a game where you can play as like Kirby or Mario or Pikachu or whatever. Like that kind of like draws people in,
Yeah, that's another one. I've only actually played that one time, and it was on one of those, I guess it was the 3DS maybe. One of the handhelds was set up at a Toys R Us, and that was the demo, and I played a little bit of the demo. That's the only time I've ever played it, embarrassing to say.
That's actually kind of weird, it's such a popular game, but I mean, I guess it is what it is, it makes sense. With that being said, I was actually gonna say, I mean, I know I wasn't really gonna cover like news, too heavy this week, but did you hear about the Nintendo Switch Lite and how it just got announced?
I did, and that one's only a handheld, right? You can't play it on your TV?
Yeah, it's just a handheld, so it would be like compared to like a 3DS or like a PSP or something,
Right.
But I believe you should be able to play like the same games and stuff. I think you can still play it about the same. It's just not connected to the TV.
Yeah, and it's a really neat idea. And it's a really almost a bold, gutsy move for them to release their system again, but handheld. It's kind of a neat idea.
Yeah, a lot of people had heard rumors and, it's funny because it ended up being almost exactly like the rumors had said. And yeah, a lot of people were like, that's weird. Would they really like re-release the system again? And I mean, sure enough, they did. And I don't know. I think it'll sell. I think there'll be people who will go like, I play it like in bed anyway. So why not, get a newer version or whatever. Maybe they'll give like the old version to like a spouse or like a child and they'll keep the new one for themselves or something,
Yeah, I've heard a couple of people saying that they bought the Switch for its handheld capabilities. So they're actually really excited about a strictly handheld version.
That's pretty cool. I know you've mentioned that you've been like interested in maybe getting a Switch, but you just, you're not really too sure because of like price and like stuff like that. Like, which version are you probably more likely to get? You would think.
Definitely the original. I'm not much of a handheld gamer. Like the only reason I initially bought my PSP is because they released that thing where you could play it on the TV.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I definitely go with the original.
All right.
Just because I like to sit down in front of my big TV and play.
I was gonna say, same thing for me. I know a lot of people that they say they have the Switch, like I said, to like play in bed or something handheld mode. Well, I do use it in handheld mode every so often. I think nothing beats having it connected to the TV. And weird fact, actually, I don't know if I've ever said this in any of my videos. I play it connected to my TV, and I have an adapter so I could use the PS4 controller to play my Switch.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like there's this little adapter you can buy for like maybe like $20, and you connect it, to the dock, and you just download some files onto it, and you just pair your controller to it, and you can use whatever controller you want. And I use the PS4 controller.
That's awesome because that's a really good controller.
Yeah, it is, and especially if you have like a PS4 already, and you're like used to using that controller. Like it makes sense,
I've been not strictly, but mostly Sony, pretty much since PlayStation 1. And I've had all the PlayStations since then. But, now with the Sony, as we talked about earlier, the Sony starting to censor stuff, and that's really making me lean towards getting a Switch even more so.
Yeah, that's the thing. Sony, I feel like it's kind of a cycle. I feel like not that long ago, Microsoft was the one that was messing everything up with, if you remember, like when they launched their Xbox One, they didn't want people like to share games. They were going to be digital only, or they were going to be like every copy was like locked or whatever. And,
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, and so they were the ones who were on the bottom. And now that they're kind of like rising to the top, being very open, teaming up with Nintendo and stuff, now Sony's going to the bottom with all like the censorship and not wanting to like play nicely with everybody else. And it's like a cycle, I believe.
I'll get your opinion on this. Me and my good buddy, Laundry Room Rob from my side of the laundry room.
Yeah.
We were discussing this recently that you are with console people, not talking about PC people, just console people. You're generally either PlayStation or Xbox, whereas the Nintendo is kind of the universal system, I think, or we think that kind of everybody or a lot of people just seem to love. Like even if you're hardcore Sony, you could still dig the Nintendo stuff, and even if you're hardcore Xbox, still dig the Nintendo stuff. It's not kind of the either or like it is between Sony and Xbox.
You know what? I think that you're 100% right. That makes sense because I indeed, I have a PS4 and I also have a Switch. I know someone that they have an Xbox One, but they also have a Switch. And I've seen online on stuff like Reddit and all sorts of, forums, like when I'm looking up news stories, exactly same thing. You see a bunch of people that even if they're like one side or the other, they seem to not have a problem getting a Switch and playing Nintendo games. Like it really does seem to be more universal. You're right. That's kind of funny how that works.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because I feel like, Nintendo just always does its own thing, Like, I don't know, they kind of just leave the fighting and the fanboyism to, like, the other companies, and they're always just doing their own thing, basically. So, I mean, that works, That's cool. I appreciate it. I think it leads to some, like, really fun stuff, like the Switch, which you can take on the go, and you have all these Nintendo first parties that are, like, nothing you can get from Sony or Microsoft. So, I think it's fun,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Nintendo, again, is just more of a universal system. And I think it appeals to a lot of people that don't get there's definitely an arrogance in quite a few gamers out there. And I don't think the Nintendo people, it just doesn't bring out the arrogance like, say, a Halo player can get at times. Not all Halo players, but... Are you calling out the Xbox people on my podcast? No, I'm not calling out anybody. I love everybody.
Speaking of which, I was gonna say, so yeah, I mean, I know when I talk about gaming, I mean, you've mentioned that you like Kingdom Hearts, you like series like that. Like, what would you say are some of like your all-time favorite series?
That's a good question. Well, series-wise, like you said, Kingdom Hearts, phenomenal. Of course, the Final Fantasy games I love, the Senran Kagura games. I tell you one I'm really super into, but not a lot of people over here are that familiar with it, and that's the One-Chanbara games.
I was gonna buy a copy of one of those once, and I wanted to get the special edition. I believe it was One-Chanbara, the Banana Split edition.
I have that. Yeah.
Oh
sure
my
enough.
god! I was
That's
gonna
a
buy
fun
it.
game.
I was gonna buy it once because like I was just with a friend and we were just kind of laughing at how like over the top the cover and stuff was.
Mhm.
And I'll admit, I mean, it was a few years ago. I mean, now I wouldn't care. I would have just buy it. But I actually chickened out of buying it because, yeah, the Banana Split edition, I think that's the one that has like all the crazy costumes and like, I know that series.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and something I say that a lot of gamers just don't like at all is I don't like hard games. To be honest, I play video games to have fun and to relax. I don't want to get frustrated. I don't want to be pulling my hair out. I just want a nice, easy ride. And One-Chanbara games, quite easy. Just easy, sit back and relax and play and have fun.
Nice. So you're not a Dark Souls or any of those games? You're not a fan of those at all?
Haven't even tried it because I read in every review it's talked about the difficulty. I was like, oh, pass.
Nice. Because, yeah, I mean, I respect that, you know, it's cool to just be open about it. Because, yeah, I feel like so many people, like, you're not a true gamer unless you can, like, play stuff like Dark Souls or whatever. And, you know, not everyone appeals to that. So, I mean, I think it's cool that you're so open about it. And you're like, nope, I mean, not my type of thing. I don't want to, like, deal with that. I just want something I can enjoy. So, I mean, that's cool. I respect that, you know?
Thanks. And I'll tell you a negative thing I read in reviews that always leans me toward a game is I love when gamers complain, oh, this game's too easy. I was like, well, that's a check in the box right there.
Nice. That's actually pretty funny because, yeah, most people would go like, oh, I guess I'll avoid it then. But, I mean, there you go. Like I said, different things appeal to different people. Different people are looking for different experiences, you know?
I was just saying, the One-Chanbara games, I mean, they're a lot of fun. And there was even a spinoff recently, I can't believe I can't remember the name.
I think it's zombies. I think it's Zombie Schoolgirls because I know some LPers that I used to watch. I think they either tried it out or they mentioned it. Like I don't know, but I know I've heard that title from them. So
yeah, that was a lot of fun too.
Yeah, I've heard it's like just like one of those wild games. If you're just like looking for something easy to play, something that doesn't take itself too seriously, I mean, those games are just fun, you know.
Well, I openly admit that I like fan service. I like when games are sleazy. I don't have any of that, how people look down on fan service and that sort of things. I think it's great. I think it has its time and it has its place. And if people are into that, you know, more power to you. Enjoy it. And I do.
Nice. I like that. I like that you're open about it. I like you're honest. That's good. Yeah, I mean, I've tried to be open about it on my channel too. It's just like whatever. I mean, I don't care. Like the same thing with the anime. Like I've been like, this anime has, you know, like the fan service or it's about this crazy premise. I mean, like I said, I think it's just there's a time and a place for it. I mean, don't take it so seriously. It's just supposed to be silly, dumb fun. So
exactly. And if you don't dig it, don't watch it. No problem. But don't knock the folks that do dig it.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, I know you dropped into my stream not that long ago, but yeah, I've just been playing through Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night, and I've been having a lot of fun with that. You know,
oh, it looks fantastic.
Yeah.
Looks great.
I did finally run across something that was kind of like, oof, you know, graphics wise, it's pretty bad. Like I defeated like it's like this double-headed dragon boss. I mean, that was a while back too. I'm like past that, but a while back, you know, I defeated that double-headed dragon boss, and like once you defeat it, like the just the graphics and like the camera, like I don't know, it just kind of freaked out. I was kind of like, whoa, that was messy. But besides that, honestly, I haven't run into any problems. I haven't noticed any of the lag that people talk about. Loading times haven't been terrible except for like when you start the game, you know, it takes like a minute to start up. But besides that, you know, I think the game's been fine. I've been enjoying it. Lots of fun with it. Definitely reminds me of those games like, you know, Castlevania Symphony of the Night or like Aria of Sorrow. Kind of reminds me of like those games a little bit, and I'm just having fun with it. You know, I'm really glad that I bought it. I've just been having a blast with it.
That's another of my all-time favorite genres is the Metroidvania games.
Yeah, like, I love Metroidvania games. Like, I don't know if now, I mean, RPGs might be like my favorite genre. Like, I'm not too sure. Like, for me, top 3 are RPGs, platformers, like just platformers, like Mario, that sort of thing, and then Metroidvanias. And I don't really know which one I would say is like number one for me. Maybe they're all tied for number one, but yeah, Metroidvanias are like definitely like one of my top like favorite things to play.
I bought a Super NES Mini modded off eBay several months back, and I actually had the person, because he was letting you pick the games to put on it.
Oh, that's really cool.
I actually had him put all the Game Boy Advance Metrovania style games on there too. It was the first time I'd gotten to play a lot of those, and that was a lot of fun. Those little Metroid games for Game Boy Advance were quite fun.
That sounds like a good time. The fact that you just got all the games on there, you got to pick, like that's really cool.
Yeah, it was worth it. Worth every penny.
Nice. And yeah, I was just gonna say, speaking of like favorite games, same thing for me. Love Metroidvania games. Been loving I was gonna say Castlevania, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, and I'm also a big, huge fan of Kingdom Hearts. I know a lot of people kind of talk down on it because like the story is kind of a little hard to follow. It kind of goes some places, but I eat it all up.
It is complex, that's for sure.
Yeah, but I eat it all up. I think it's fun. I think it's fine once you're like, when you dive into it and you get into it, I don't even think you mind too much. I think it's enjoyable,
Well, that's just how a lot of people are. They complain if it's not plot heavy enough. They complain when it's too plot heavy. It's just hard to make people happy. But I love the complexity of the story.
Yeah, and I'm super excited for that DLC to come out. I mean, it sucks we don't really have too much information yet, or like a date or anything, but like I'm looking forward to it. I really want to see what the DLC does. Like the fact that the guy said it's gonna have as much extra bosses as Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix had supposedly, like that gets me excited.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a great series. I am ready for them to expand the world, though. I love Sora, but I'm ready to let someone else take the reins for a little while.
I mean, the bad thing is, it's not even bad. I think we're always going to have Sora as like the main character, like the main character. I think that's just the nature of the series. But I'm definitely looking forward to the next title that does like the Birth by Sleep thing, where we get other people within the universe to play as, for instance. Yeah, I'm excited for that. And I am really interested. Did you watch the secret movie for Kingdom Hearts 3?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I don't think we should like spoil it in case nobody's like really played it.
Right.
But just I guess kind of tiptoeing around it, like what it shows is interesting, right? Because it seems like they're gonna like mix things up next time.
Yeah. I was thinking that same thing too. Maybe it's gonna give someone else a chance to shine for a little while. Like I still want to play as Kairi.
Exactly. Yeah, and so hopefully the next game, from what we've seen. We know, I'm just trying to tiptoe around it. We know Sora is in a weird situation, and we do know that Riku's involved in maybe helping him, but if we also got a bit of Kairi, that would be interesting. That would be fun.
Yeah, so let me ask you, where did this all begin for you? Like, what was the anime that set you down the path? What was your gateway anime?
All right, so I can answer the one for anime, and I can answer the one for video games.
Yeah, do both.
Which one do you want first?
Let's start with anime, I guess.
Okay, so for me, anime, it's so funny because it's so clear too, right? Like for me, ever since I was younger, I've always watched anime here and there. But it was always the anime like Pokemon or Digimon, stuff like that was just on TV. Like the 4Kids stuff that was edited. So I wouldn't really count it, but it was always there. What really started it for me, like the actual like hardcore, like I'm aware I'm watching anime, I'm gonna start.
And you are a fan.
Yeah, like I'm seeking it out now. Back in high school, I want to say. Okay, I'm not gonna remember what year of high school, unfortunately. But back in high school, this girl, she was in my biology class. It was like part of our like table or whatever. I don't know, for whatever reason, and we were just talking about different shows or movies or whatever. And out of nowhere, she's like, "Oh yeah, have you ever watched Bleach?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't even know what she was talking about." And she's like, "Yeah, I think you would really like Bleach, because it seems like the kind of thing you'd be into." And she kind of described it a little bit. And I'm like, that sounds interesting, I guess. I'll go check it out. And so that's kind of where it started because she suggested that to me. I was like, what's this Bleach thing I've heard of? Looked it up. And back then, I didn't really know about like Crunchyroll or any of that. I didn't even really know where to like find anime. So I remember looking it up on YouTube, where you can find like, episode 1 is cut into like 3 different parts or whatever. And that's...
Oh, yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah, and that's how I like got into it, because I was like, okay, she said this thing's good, let me watch it. And I started watching it. And I'm like, this is really interesting. And it's not like really like anything I've seen before, because like I said, I've only watched like cartoons or like, anime that's very... like, it's different. Like, Pokemon, Digimon, that sort of thing, they're not very... Like, they're different, you know what I mean? And so this is unlike anything I've seen before. Like, the action, like, the storytelling, the art style. This is, like, really interesting. And so I started watching Bleach. And, I remember I started watching on YouTube, catching up with the episodes little by little, watching them, part 2 of 3, all that good stuff. And then at one point, I reached a point where... I think like I had to wait for the next episode to come out because it hadn't been uploaded yet, like someone hadn't taken the time to like download it, cut it into chunks and upload it. And that's where I was like, okay, I mean, like what else can I watch? What other anime are out there that I would be interested in? And that's where I got into stuff like, Death Note and... I'm trying to remember. I know Death Note was like the second thing I watched. I know a lot of people watch that because it's very easy to get into, it kind of shows you like what anime can be, I watched Death Note. I think I watched, it was some random show. It was like some random like romance show. I'm not going to remember at this point, but I remember I watched it. It was about like this girl that this guy's in love with her. But then like whenever like emergency alarms ring, she like turns into like a robot and flies off. It's really weird. Fun. It's really weird. It's a very weird story. That was definitely a weird one for like my 3rd anime ever. But I was like, okay, I have a tolerance for like the weird stuff. And it just went from there, basically. Oh.
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't talked to a more modern anime person to kind of know that progression. It's so different. It's interesting.
Yeah. What about you? Like, how did you get into it? Like, what do you remember?
Oh, man. Well, I'm probably about 7 times older than you.
Oh, no.
So I grew up in the 80s.
Okay.
And I didn't realize until much after the fact, but back in the 80s, the TV landscape was a lot different than it is now. Networks didn't have as much original programming back then. A lot of it was stuff they were licensing, syndicating, buying, etc., etc. So in the early days of Nickelodeon, there was no Nicktoons Network. It was just Nickelodeon. They didn't have a lot of original content. So a lot of their content they played was old anime. Stuff that I didn't even know until semi-recently that this stuff was anime that I grew up watching. Things like The Little Prince, Maya the Bee, so on and so on. But I watched the Grimm's Fairy Tales. That was one I remember watching a lot, like a classic anime as a kid. So I grew up on a lot of that stuff but didn't even know it was a thing. It wasn't until I'd say it was my spring break of either 91 or 92. My local movie gallery actually got a small, and back then we didn't know the term anime. We just called it Japanese animation. But they actually got a small Japanese animation section at Movie Gallery in like 91 or 92. It was only like 10 tapes, but I saw it and the covers just really appealed to me. And I went through and I rented every one of them and just devoured everything they had. And it was basically the old Streamline Pictures stuff, which was your Windaria, Robot Carnival, then things like The Lensman, Zillion, I think Macross to The Sentinels, things like that. And that's when I knew that Japanese animation was a thing. And that's when I started looking for it, going out of my way to find this stuff.
That's pretty cool, and you're right. That is a very different take, obviously. Your way of getting into it, my way of getting into it. Like, you're right. It is funny how different that is. I mean, yeah, like...
It was just a different time, too. Like, back then, anime was super rare. Like I said, except for that one little section at the movie gallery, there was no place in town to buy it. I would have to go to a completely different city to specialty shops to buy anime. And back then, I think it was $24.95 for the single VHS tape, dubbed. And then a subtitled tape was $29.95 for some reason.
$5 difference. That's weird. Yeah, it is really different.
Yeah, and that was when Viz Communications. Is Viz still around?
I believe they are. Yeah, I think they are. I'm not too sure, but I want to say they are. Don't quote me on
But
that.
they were kind of one of the first ones first company. Well, I guess Streamline Pictures was the first company I really got into, but Viz was when I started like actually ordering the stuff from them directly.
Makes sense, you know? And like I said, that's really interesting to hear. And yeah, it's just crazy how the internet really does change things, I guess, because yeah, I mean, if I hadn't gotten into it as YouTube was already like a thing, then yeah, I would have had to have like gone out of my way to look for anime. So that it's interesting to hear. Like that is a very different origin.
It was tough too. It was tough. I remember the closest place I could buy anime was at a little bitty comic shop in Panama City Beach, Florida, which was about 4 hours from where I lived. And it's where we went on vacation every summer. So every summer, that was my one time of the year to buy anime. So I would always go there. I mean, I was excited about going to the beach, but I think I was more excited about actually getting to go to this little comic shop and buy anime. And I would just buy whatever they had. Because back then, your choices were so limited. I'd just buy everything. It was just that easy.
Yeah, like it didn't matter what they had. It's just like whatever. I'm gonna get something new out of it, so it doesn't even matter what it is. I mean,
it's funny. I was still like a young teen, and I went in there and I had no idea what it was, but I bought the first volume, and they sold it to me too, no questions asked, of Aratsukadoji. Are you familiar with that one?
I'm not. But I mean, the title. I mean,
okay. So Aratsukadoji, it's not hentai. But it is the anime that people look back on and say, okay, this is what started hentai.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It is extreme. And yeah, they just sold it to me and I bought it, came home and watched it and I was like, what did I buy?
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yes.
Did you get in trouble? Like, did your parents ever see you watching it? Or
no, they didn't pay any kind of attention to anything like that. So
that's funny, man. I mean, that's history. That's funny that you got the one that started hentai. So I mean, that's some history right there.
Yeah. Now, as far as like series and stuff go, the first series I got, because at that point, basically just the best of the best stuff was brought over from Japan and dubbed. The whole series thing wasn't as common to bring over yet. But the first series I really got into, I remember being at my local comic book store, and it's when Viz Media, or it was Viz Media at the time, first started kind of bringing stuff over. And they were releasing the Ranma 1/2 graphic novels, but they split it up into like comic book form. It was comic sized. It read from left to right, not right to left, like just more like an American comic. And I saw the anime style artwork on the cover. I was like, hey, wait, what is this? I didn't even know what manga was at the time. And so I bought it and just fell in love with that series. And then in the back, they were like, coming soon, volume 1 of the anime. And I pre-ordered it. And that was it for me.
Nice. That's pretty interesting. That's pretty cool that you got exposed to it that way. That's pretty cool. Did you end up watching like the whole series through the like you said you pre-ordered like volume 1? Did you end up back then watching the whole series that way, or?
No, I did buy I pre-ordered and then I ordered as they were coming out because they weren't in any stores yet, the whole first season. And then around that time, the anime boom of the 90s started, and places like GameStop and stuff started getting anime. So I bought the second season there, and it started getting easier and easier around that point.
It started with like the pre-orders and then just evolved to you being able to get it easier and easier. That's pretty interesting, just seeing that change.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't know how weird it was the first time I walked into like a GameStop and there was an anime section of anime tapes for sale. It was so bizarre because I'd been like the only person that knew anything about any of this in my hometown in such a small thing, and to just suddenly everyone was digging it. It was very strange.
I can imagine, I have heard other people in the past talk about that, same thing with like video games or like Star Trek, that sort of thing, I've heard lots of people tell their stories that, yeah, before the internet was a thing and stuff became more available, you were kind of just alone in your circle of interest, so yeah, it's just interesting. It's always so interesting to hear about because we just take for granted how easy it is now, and how mainstream it is too, yeah.
You mentioned Death Note showing you what an anime could be. For me, it was back in the day, as we've been talking in the comments a lot, Evangelion. That was the one that when I watched it, and I watched it when they first started releasing it and had to wait for the darn volumes to come out because, you know, they didn't come out all at once. They released them one at a time over a period. But I remember watching that and thinking, I can't believe this exists. This is so good, so deep. It blew my mind.
Yeah, like that's what I think is so interesting about something like Evangelion, that I watched it, let's see, I want to say I watched it for the first time 6 years ago, let's say. I want to say it was 6 years ago. So it's still fairly recent, right? I had always heard about the show, had heard it was very interesting. And so I said, I'm going to watch it. And sure enough, I mean, I'm going to get a little, you know, I'm going to disclose some information here. I never really talk about like my personal stuff too much. At one point, I worked security for a company where I worked the graveyard shift, and on weekends, I would work the day shift. So it was kind of a weird thing, right? But basically on weekends, it would be like really empty. It would be a ghost town. You know, I would have to deal with people like maybe once an hour. And so they had a TV with like an HDMI connection. And so I, you know, found a way to bring something in and, you know, connect it and watched Evangelion. And so I watched like the whole series during like a shift of work, like an 8-hour, 10-hour shift of work by myself at a security box, you know, and I remember being blown away. Like, even though at this point I had already watched a bunch of anime, just watching it by myself in one sitting, it was just like such an experience because, I mean, even now, Evangelion is just it's so crazy. I mean, for anyone who hasn't watched it, it's just such a trip, you know?
And is so deep and multi-layered. See, you're lucky in the fact of, I mean, the internet was around when it was starting to be released, but it was nothing like it is today. So many of the theories and just the background information, stuff that's never mentioned in the anime, but is out there, you had to really search that information out. I remember having to make notebooks and like print stuff off the computer and stuff just to have this background information. But nowadays, you can just jump. I bet there's an Evangelion wiki you can just jump on and have all this information for you.
It's just so incredible that if years later, with the invention of the internet, with all these other anime that are out, and, you know, anime being so mainstream, I just find it so incredible that if I watched this series and was still so blown away, I can't even begin to imagine what it must have been like back then. Because I've read up, I've read up that like Evangelion basically like saved the anime industry because it made people go like, wow, anime can be this storytelling medium that can be deep if it wants to, and it doesn't have to just sell toys or like any of that stuff. You know, it can just be a storytelling medium with things to say.
Just a little tidbit, the very first DVD I ever bought, and I held off on DVD for a little while because it sounds funny now, but at the time I wasn't sure DVD was going to make it because it was competing with the HD disc and you just didn't know. But the very first DVD I ever bought was Volume 1 of the Evangelion anime.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Do you still have it?
I don't actually. I was going to buy the box set and not have the individual volumes, and I just never got around to buying the box set, which now I'm regretting.
Okay, so, you know, we cut some stuff out, you know, just, you know, full disclosure, we cut some stuff out because, you know, we had a little bit of an issue there. However, now that we're back, I do have a question for Slim, and
yes,
I think after this, we will move on to like the video game part because I did want to answer the other question instead of how. Yeah, but I was going to say, okay, Evangelion, who is your Evangelion waifu?
Okay, you're going to have to forgive me for this. Like I said, I've been out of the anime scene for a long time, just started to get back into it. What exactly is this waifu thing I keep hearing about?
Okay, so like waifu and...
Is it as obvious as it sounds?
It is pretty obvious. Yeah, this sounds really funny. I feel super geeky having to explain it now. But yeah, basically waifu and husbando, it's like who's your anime wife or anime husband. So like in Evangelion, for instance, it means which girl, I guess. Like which girl is best girl? Which girl are you like, that's the winner, that's the one I like the most?
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't totally off.
Okay.
That's a tough question because, you know, Asuka's kind of mean, Rei's kind of bland, I don't know. That is a really tough, good question. How you answer, and I'll think about it.
Okay, so for me, full disclosure, I am well aware that all these characters are a mess. I am well aware that some of these characters are like underage and stuff, right? I'm not saying
Yeah.
I'm not saying I would like legitimately get with them or like I like them, like, you know what I mean, like they have bad personalities. But
Yeah.
personally, I really like Asuka.
Okay. That's
Like
a good choice.
I don't know. I just think, you know, fiery redhead with kind of a temper and stuff. You know, I think that's kind of cool. You know, I always liked her better than like Rey because yeah, Rey's just so bland, like emotionless and stuff. And I don't know. I like Asuka, so.
Yeah, I'm going to go a different direction. One of my favorite characters back in the day, I don't know why, it was such a small, minor appearance. I loved Kaoru. So, I don't know, it's the 90s. I'm going to be open-minded and say Kaoru as my character, as my waifu.
And I've heard people say that. I've heard a funny one where someone was like, Unit 1 is the best waifu.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I'm changing my answer. I'm going to go with one of the, I forget the numbers, the evil ones at the end, the white ones with the wings and the very creepy faces.
You mean like the prototype Evangelions, or?
It's been so long since I've seen it. In End of Evangelion, all those white ones that come down with the wings that are attacking, and Asuka is fighting them off.
Yeah, I believe they're called like the prototypes, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, because those are like the prototype ones. I mean, or no, not prototype. I'm sorry. The mass-produced Evangelions is, I think, what they're called.
Yeah, the mass-produced ones. I'll go with one of those.
That one of those is best waifu.
Yeah.
There you go. You guys got it. You guys got it. I mean, anyone listening, you know what me and Slim are into. I appreciate the fiery redheads that are kind of mean to you. He loves the mass-produced Evangelions.
Giant white robots.
I was gonna say that's awesome. I was gonna say, yeah. I realized we were talking about anime for a bit. So jumping over, you know, finally to the other question. They said, how did I really get into gaming? Once again, it's a very clear thing for me. Ever since I've been young, there's an uncle of mine. You know, he's my mom's brother. It's her younger brother by like 5 years, maybe. I want to say, yeah, like 5 years, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And he is, even now, he's still a pretty big gamer. And so as I was growing up, he always had like every system lying around. He always had like a Super Nintendo, an N64, PlayStation 2, that sort of thing. And whenever we would visit my grandma, you know, up until he was like, I don't know, like early 20s, and he, you know, got married and moved in with his wife or whatever, at my grandma's, he always had his systems lying around. And so I got into gaming through the Super Nintendo because he always had it lying around. Yeah, he always had it lying around. I remember I used to love playing stuff like Super Mario World, Mario RPG, like weird games like Bart's Nightmare, if you've ever played that. That's like a really weird SNES title. Donkey Kong Country 2, that sort of thing. So he always used to just have, you know, his SNES lying around. I could always play it whenever I wanted. And so, yeah, some of the first games I played were, like I said, you know, like Mario RPG and Mario World and that sort of thing. And, you know, as I grew, I never really had a system of my own until I got the Nintendo GameCube. But yeah, every like weekend or, you know, every so often that I would go to my grandma's, I would always just play whatever he had. And I had some good memories from that, you know, playing the Super Nintendo, playing the N64. I remember he had a Dreamcast, and when I saw some of those games for the Dreamcast, those blew my mind. Like, I don't know how familiar you are with the Dreamcast, but that little VMU thing that you stick into the controller, like, that blew my mind. And games like Shenmue, which are like super open world, and they were like the first of their kind. I remember being like super amazed with that. And years later, you know, after he got married and he moved out and whatever, he had a PS2 and he had like a binder full of games. And that's actually where I played Kingdom Hearts for the first time, at his house.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, that's how I got into gaming, basically.
That's great. That's great, though, that you started with Super Nintendo. That's a really cool place to begin.
Yeah, I think so too, honestly. Like, even now, you know, if I were to look at like the NES, SNES, and like N64, you know, out of like those three, Super Nintendo's still my favorite, you know?
Mine too, and it holds up. Like I said, I got the Mini not long ago, and I played Super Mario World, I played Super Mario RPG. Those games are still just as fun as they ever were.
Yeah, because like NES games, there's some really good ones, but I feel like maybe they don't hold up as much due to like the difficulty, not really having like a save option, that sort of thing. And Super Nintendo, and then N64, lots of good games, but I feel like they don't really hold up because of like the graphics and like the jankiness to the 3D. You know, I feel like sometimes they can feel like a little awkward to play. So that's why I feel like the SNES is like that sweet spot where, you know, they had a lot of like the saving options for the first time. The graphics still hold up. You know, there's not really that jankiness from the 3D. So, you know, SNES for me all the way. It's one of my favorites.
Well, just think about how many great classic games are on that system. I mean, Super Metroid alone speaks volumes. But then you have Super Mario World, you have Super Mario RPG, just so much good. Final Fantasy, 3/6. I mean, that right there is a milestone.
Yeah, for sure. And then, like I said, the Donkey Kong countries, those still look great. And like the way they made the backgrounds, I mean, it still holds up and looks awesome.
I think those are on my modded. I haven't had a chance to play them yet, though, but I think they are on there.
Yeah, like the Donkey Kong games, Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, and 3, super fun games. And I feel like the graphics, I mean, like they still hold up. Like they did some magic making all of those backgrounds and stuff and those environments.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I mean, Super NES, one of my favorites. And yeah, for me, that's how I really got into gaming, you know. Had that uncle, like he's always been a gamer, even now he's a gamer. He always had all the systems lying around. And yeah, I just tried out so many games throughout my childhood until I was like an early teen and I got my own GameCube or whatever. And from there, you know, that's where I kind of took gaming into my own hands, you know what I mean? But that's where it started for me. So what about you?
That's great. Well, as I said, I grew up in the 80s, and I think I was 2 when the 80s began. But my mom actually had an Atari. And even though I wasn't hugely into it, I would play a couple of the Atari games here and there. So that was kind of my first exposure to video games, but it was when the Nintendo came out. Actually, Master System and Nintendo came out. And that was kind of when it really got onto my radar. And I remember I'd started at a new school, and it was a very small school, but there was kind of 2 sort of groups. There was the Master System side, and there was the Nintendo side. And I remember both sides trying to kind of talk me, like, no, get a Master System. No, get a Nintendo. I ended up going with Nintendo, actually. I don't remember for what reason, but yeah, that was the first system I ever owned.
What was the first game you played on it? Do you remember?
Fantastic question. Probably Mario Brothers, because it came with the system.
Yeah, it did, right? I mean,
yeah.
I know like now there's the cartridges that have the Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt. Was it that one? That was that one? It was
that one indeed. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Okay, nice. So that's pretty cool. You know, you were there basically from like the beginning. That's really cool.
Yeah. I don't remember the first game I ever bought, but I remember the last Nintendo game I ever bought, and that was the Monster in My Pocket game, because it came with a little exclusive Monster in My Pocket figure. And if you're probably too young to remember that, but it was a toy line from the 80s and early 90s. It was basically just little rubber classic monsters.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say I'm not familiar with it, but I mean, I know I have heard of it.
Yeah, that was the last Nintendo game I bought, and I thought it was so cool that it came with a toy. That was something back then was, you know, now you have the pre-order bonuses and stuff. It's a little more common, but back then a Nintendo cartridge coming with a toy, that was unheard of.
I guess I could see that. Yeah. So, I mean, that's pretty cool. You were able to take advantage of that. I mean, that sounds fun.
Yeah, it was. That's a fun game too.
Yeah. I was going to say, I know you were really into like Nintendo and like Sony. Have you ever really played around with any of like the Sega systems, like the Dreamcast, any of those?
I had a Genesis, and I believe the Genesis was the last one. No, I take that back. I had a Genesis, but there was a time period in the 90s where I got super into the Castlevania stuff, and I was trying to just hardcore collect anything Castlevania I could. Well, the Saturn version of Symphony of the Night had an extra playable character. So I had to have it. So I bought that, and then I got a Saturn just so I could play that game with the playable character in the Japanese Symphony of the Night.
Just that one game.
Yep, and that's all I ever owned was the one game.
I mean, wow, you were dedicated to, like you said, collecting as much as you could.
Yeah.
So you never messed around, played with the Dreamcast?
I didn't, because I think that was the point where I was like, okay, I'm pretty much a Sony person now, and I just didn't have the money to continuously buy all the different systems, so I just kind of stuck with PlayStation.
Gotcha. Because, yeah, I mean, the Dreamcast, I just think it's such an interesting system. I feel like there's a whole little history there. I mean, I don't know if you know, but that was like Sega's last console because it didn't do very well. But it's just so weird because it's just like so ahead of its time. Like I said, you would have the controller that you would plug into the Dreamcast, but then there's like this little, it's called like the VMU. It stands for like virtual memory unit, I think. And it's like this little, like, what would you say? It looks like a little beeper, I guess you could say, and has like a little screen on it, and you like plug it into the controller, and so when you look down at your controller, it has like a little screen, and depending on the game you're playing, it would look different. So like, let's say you're playing like Crazy Taxi, I think it doesn't really do much, it just says Crazy Taxi, but it's like a little LED screen. But if you're playing like Sonic Adventure 1, I believe that's the one that had like the little Chow Garden. You could actually look down and you can see like your little Chow buddy on the screen. And if you like take it out, you can play games with your Chow on just the little VMU, like on the go.
It's a shame it didn't make it, because nowadays I do kind of miss Sega having a console on the market.
Yeah, and it's a shame too, because they had a lot of really unique games. Like, I feel like they it's a shame their system crashed, though I do kind of get it, because they were competing with like the GameCube and like the PS2, which the PS2 is like a juggernaut. I mean, I think it's like the second or like the first best-selling system ever or whatever. But yeah, the Dreamcast had some really interesting titles. Like, if you ever look at my video I made where I said Sega games that I think should make a comeback or whatever, they had Crazy Taxi, which like that was a really fun game that got ported over from the arcade. They had Shenmue, which nowadays, I feel like Shenmue, I mean, I feel like there's better open world games like Yakuza and stuff like that. But back then, it was just mind blowing to see a game that was open world and that had like day and night cycle and all that stuff. They had Space Channel 5, which was like a really fun like rhythm type game. I
played that. I did play that one. A buddy brought that over.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I mean, I don't really remember there being like that many rhythm games before that time. So that being like a rhythm game was really cool. They had Jet Set Radio, which, it was like a game where you're like skating around and you do graffiti and you have to like do escape from like enemies and cops and stuff. Like, that game was really cool. And I don't know, I want to say it came out around the time of like Tony Hawk games, and it offered something like a little different, so like that was really fun. So yeah, the Dreamcast's not really taking off, and Sega, the fact that they stopped making consoles is a shame, because it was fun seeing there be someone else in the market.
I had a buddy who was super into Dreamcast, and I seem to remember, it's been so long now, I maybe remember incorrectly, but when the movie The Ring came out, he was already familiar with it because there was a Ringu game for the Dreamcast that he had played and said was really great.
Oh, wow. I didn't know about that. I mean, I knew there was like a Ring game for like, I want to say the Wii. I never knew there was one for like the Dreamcast. Like, that's actually pretty cool.
Don't quote me. I may be incorrect, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
With that being said, I'm looking over at the time. We've been recording for like an hour and a half.
Oh, might want to split this one into two or just do a lot of editing.
No, I think I'll keep it all. But I was gonna say, I think I'm
Shout out.
Yeah, I think for sure I'm gonna have you on for like another thing so we can just reminisce. But yeah, for sure, this has been really fun. I mean, we're just talking and talking. It's already been an hour and a half, but I was having a lot of fun. Hopefully, anyone that listens in, hopefully they have fun. But yeah, I was gonna say, I think we should kind of like wrap it up for now. And yeah, I had mentioned earlier to you if you want to do some sort of like a shout out. So I'll let you do that, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know if this is someone you've already covered on your channel. If you have, forgive me. Even though I've been watching all the recent ones, but probably the most appropriate of the people of my buddies for your fan base would be the SuperGhidorah channel. Have you mentioned him yet?
I have not. I'm not familiar with him.
Oh, okay. SuperGhidorah is my buddy Al from Australia, and he has the most phenomenal giant monster, or Japanese monster, even though it's not just Japanese, toy collection I've ever seen. And it's basically just a channel about his kaiju toys and stuff.
Oh, that sounds really fun. Okay, that sounds cool.
It is a lot of fun. He's a really charming, likable fella, and he just talks about his often his kaiju toys. So yeah, definitely check out. It's SuperGhidorah, and it's one word.
All right. I mean, there you have it, folks. Spider Island Slim, he's giving a shout out to SuperGhidorah. And I mean, yeah, if you're a fan of like kaiju stuff and figures and all that, I mean, that sounds like a fun channel. Just him showing off all his stuff. That kind of reminds me of, I gave him a shout out not too long ago, the Cadaver Club.
Oh yeah, Ben.
Yeah, Ben, he does that too, where he talks about all his like Godzilla figures and stuff. I always think that's really fun. So, I mean, there you go. That sounds pretty cool, and I'll definitely have to check him out. So, SuperGhidorah, I'll make sure to add that in the description below so people can check him out. Do you know how many subscribers he has, by the way?
He just reached 300 because he's actually doing a contest right now. He is, even though he downplays his skill, he is a phenomenal kit. Like making model kits and such. His painting skills are unbelievable. He's actually doing a contest where he took like 3, I think they're Gundam robots, but he painted them up to look like classic horror movie icons.
Oh, that sounds really interesting. Wow, that's really creative and unique. Yeah, that's really cool.
It is very, like, he has one that looks like it's painted in the Freddy Krueger color scheme, and it's even got the little Freddy Krueger hat, but it's got a cannon on it. Really unique, really cool. And yeah, he's doing a 300 subscriber contest right now to win those. So yeah, definitely check him out.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. If anyone who's listening sounds interesting to you, check SuperGhidorah out. Help him reach, if he only has 300 right now, sounds like he deserves more to me. So help his subscriber count go up. And, as always, show him some love. Comment on his videos, subscribe, tell him that Wannabe Reviewer and Galactic Happy Hour sent you. So there you go.
Yes.
And let's see. With that being said, like I said, I think it's incredible how we just sat down and started talking, and we've been recording for so long. I mean, I had a lot of fun. I'm definitely gonna definitely have you on again. But for now, I don't want to keep it too long because I just don't know how much people are willing to listen. You know what I mean? Maybe like listening to us for like an hour and a half straight might be a little much. But I had a lot of fun. I definitely want to have you back on. And yeah, so for now, I mean, I will say goodbye. But everybody, check this guy out. Spider Island Slim. That's what he is. That's his handle over on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, over on Twitter, I believe his handle is Spider Island Slim. Over on YouTube, he is Galactic Happy Hour. Check him out. And yeah, besides that, it's been a pleasure having you on. I'm super excited to have you on again. And I don't know, I was gonna say, can you think of a video game soundtrack that you would like me to stick at the end of the episode?
Oh, wow, that is a great question. There's so much good. Maybe throw something from Final Fantasy VI at the end if you can. Shadow's theme would be a good one.
There you go. Perfect. Then I'll try to stick that at the end of this episode to close us off. But yeah, as I was saying, it was a pleasure to have you on. Everybody go check out Spider Island Slim. As for me, my name is Wannabe Reviewer. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, even if it was, pretty different in format. And for sure, I will try to be back next week for episode 39. Until next time, have a good one, everybody.